And now, the general weather around Alaska.
Welcome to Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service in Alaska region on this Sunday, September 22nd, 2024. And if you'd like additional weather information on top of what you get in this YouTube video, you can go to weather.gov. That is the National Weather Service's online presence. It'll bring you to a map of the continental U.S. with Hawaii and Alaska to the lower left and tabs at the bottom for the territories. And a quick check of the national, at least the lower 48 map. Not too much going on. Still some coastal flood advisories along areas of the mid-Atlantic coast, but area of frost freezing temperatures. We have freeze advisories for the Arrowhead region of Minnesota and northern Wisconsin and the upper Great Lakes. And what we're going to be watching in the week ahead that could turn into a pretty major weather story is the potential for a significant hurricane to develop and come up into the eastern Gulf of Mexico and perhaps impact Florida somewhere along, especially the Florida Panhandle. So stay tuned to later forecast. That would happen late in the week, like late Thursday into early Friday. But in the meantime, the autumnal equinox arrived early this Sunday morning, the astronomical arrival of fall, and we've certainly had the weather to go with it. Number of locations in and around Anchorage picked up some of the first frost of the season, and that's just the beginning. We have another round of rain and wind tonight into Monday, moving along the Gulf Coast and into the Panhandle. Areas of the Panhandle will see periods of moderate to locally heavy rain, not just tonight, but through about Wednesday. And we're expecting on the backside of a pretty strong low in the Gulf, we have northeasterly to northerly winds along the west coast. That's going to draw down some colder air there as we go through the early week. And another interesting astronomical note is we have the potential to have a visible comet in the evening sky by mid-October. We're watching one in particular that is in the beginning stages of perhaps brightening, so that could be a pleasant thing to see as long as we can get some clear skies. So speaking of skies at least breaking up in some sunshine, Chandler Shelf, partly sunny, 33 after snowfall. That was the area that had the winter storm warning for some heavier snowfall earlier this weekend, including Anatuvik Pass, Adigan Passes, but at least the good news is the snow is let up there for the time being. Gamble, windy, partly sunny, 39 degrees, brisk northeast to north winds, 30-40 miles an hour there. That's all part of the circulation around very broad area of low pressure that's going to be lifting out of the North Pacific along the south side of the Alaska Peninsula into the Gulf tonight and tomorrow. Kodiak, wind-driven rain, 47 degrees. There are storm warnings in effect for areas of the western Gulf just outside of Cook Inlet, northeast of Kodiak Island, off the Kenai coast, outside of Hinchinbrook entrance. We're expecting storm force winds tonight with a frontal system lifting northeastward across the Gulf. In Sitka, a little break in the rain this Sunday morning and afternoon, 54, but there's an approaching front that'll rapidly bring the rain back in this Sunday evening. And the rain could be heavy at times tonight into especially Monday morning with some additional rounds of rainfall as we go through Monday night, Tuesday, Wednesday. So here we have special weather statement for the northeastern Gulf Coast, including Yakutat and then all of the Panhandle. Expect several rounds of moderate to locally heavy rain. We're not expecting any major flooding, but it's going to be a very wet period where an inch or two of rain could fall at a time. And this low pressure that's coming up now out of the North Pacific just south of Kodiak Island will be emerging here into the western Gulf by mid-morning on Monday. And it's a broad circulation around this low pressure that's going to allow for brisk northeast to north winds here across the eastern Bering and west side of the state, as well as that will tend to draw down some colder air along the west side of the state. So I did want to mention there's a potential for a visible comet here as we get into mid-October. It would be visible after sunset in the western sky, starting, I have to dial in on some of the details, but it's something to note just to keep in the back of your mind. But it could be visible for a good 10-day, 2-week period. And this comet, Suchinsan Atlas, is showing signs of brightening that could make it a naked eye object in the evening sky come mid to the latter portion of October. So in the meantime, let's look at what we have. Broad area moisture. Look at this stream of moisture coming right up into the Panhandle. We have Some lightning thunder here just to the southeast of Kodiak Island. This low is fairly deep, down just below 970 millibars, and it's going to be working its way up here into the western Gulf by mid-morning Monday. The backside of it, we have brisk northeast to north winds along the west coast through the Bering Strait out over St. Lawrence Island, and those winds will be turning north-northwest here across the Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula as this low swings up into the Gulf on Monday. So here is the low right now, 969 millibars with this frontal system out ahead of it. This front's lifting north and northeastward. Along this front, we have gale to storm force winds, as I mentioned. Storm warnings are in effect for areas of the western Gulf. Just outside of Kennedy Entrance, lower Cook Inlet, including the eastern Barren Islands, areas just northeast of Kodiak, and also up here along the Kenai coastline to outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance, we have storm warnings in effect for tonight. And by the time we get into 4 a.m.-ish, early morning, the low will be just east of Kodiak Island, coming up a little bit in pressure to 975 millibars, but that front will be pushing up along the outer coast of the Panhandle with bands of moderate to locally heavy rain and gusty winds. Still some lingering light snow across portions of the north slope, spine of the Brooks Range, and then you can see the circulation around this low, brisk northeast to north winds along the west coast. And by Monday afternoon, the low at 980 millibars, so it's come up a bit, filling a little, is located here over the western portion of the Gulf with the occluded front pushing inland toward the southeast interior mountains and up through past the Panhandle into British Columbia. And by Tuesday, that low is just slowly filling, coming up to 991 millibars, but still has areas of light, moderate rain around it, and just kind of doing its thing, spinning around. Winds maybe not quite as strong down through the Bering Strait and St. Lawrence Island, but we have that north-northwesterly flow across the Aleutians, eastern Aleutians into the Alaska Peninsula. So this is just going to draw down some cooler, crisper fall air here as we head through the midweek. Temperatures warmest southern Panhandle, low 50s for lows. We should stay above freezing tonight, south central areas because of the increasing cloud cover and winds, especially there along the Kenai Peninsula and Kodiak Island. And then temperatures on Monday afternoon with periods of rain. We're looking at mid-upper 50s here in the Panhandle, near or just above 50 in south central areas and along the northwestern Gulf Coast. Lows Tuesday morning, maybe down to 36 at Glen Allen, but generally above 40, low to maybe middle 40s south central. And still, we're looking lows upper 40s to low 50s here across much of the Panhandle, with the exception maybe up around 54, 55 at Ketchikan, and daytime highs generally confined to around or just above 50 for Tuesday afternoon, with some additional rounds of rain, especially here back through the Kenai Peninsula, back along the Gulf Coast, and then in through the Panhandle. There'll be waves of showers and or just areas of rain continue into the day Wednesday. For the central and northern parts of the mainland, lows tonight getting down below freezing and well into the 20s across the Brooks Range. Normally cold spots, you're going to see 20s. Otherwise 30s common, low mid-30s common. Highs again mainly in the 40s, lower mid-40s, Seward Peninsula up along the Yukon River, mid-40s for highs. Warmest readings could squeak out a 50-degree reading, say around Tok or on over toward Fairbanks, but that would be about as warm as it gets. Tuesday morning lows generally back down around freezing along the Arctic coast, below freezing and through the Brooks Range, getting well down into the 20s, and otherwise low and mid-30s, just a notch above freezing common throughout the area. And then temperatures again, Tuesday afternoon very similar, mid-upper 30s along the Arctic coast, nearer or just below freezing on the Brooks Range. Temperatures not much above 40, maybe 43 there at Nome. And then warmest readings up near 50, Fairbanks on over toward Northway, as would be expected. And across the southwest for Monday morning, lows stay above freezing with the wind holding up. Plenty of clouds, precipitation here, Alaska Peninsula up through Kodiak Island, lows in the low mid-40s there. And then Monday afternoon, highs stay in the 40s with breezy conditions here, especially along coastal areas, St. Matthew, St. Paul, and down across the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, brisk northwesterly winds in the wake of the low that's going to be just kind of parked here over the western Gulf early in the week. And temperatures Tuesday afternoon, we're looking for highs only low mid 40s, best in many areas of the southwest. And again, trailing out along the Alaska Peninsula into the central Aleutians, highs generally in the mid upper 40s. Quick check of the extended temperature outlook now that we close out the month of September, enter the first couple of days of October, centered right there on the transition, September 30th. We're finding that temperatures are expected to average below normal over southwest areas of the state, especially the southwest coast, YK deltas, Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Bay, and down through the Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula, as well as the southeast mainland, especially the northeastern Gulf Coast, in through the Panhandle, with near normal temperatures across areas north of Anchorage up through the Alaska Range, Fairbanks, Central Brooks Range, all the way up to Utqiagvik. Precipitation-wise, precipitation may average a bit above normal across southern portions of the mainland, along and south of the Alaska Range, along the Gulf Coast, and into the Panhandle. Depending on what storms take shape, there's a potential for a stronger low to come up out of the North Pacific and get into the Gulf here next weekend in this time frame. So this could be these amounts, or the potential for above normal precipitation could actually end up being a bit higher along areas of the Gulf Coast and Panhandle if that does indeed pan out. So stay tuned to later forecast, and we are now definitely into fall.